I personally hope that our society will move towards a future where we live in harmony with our planet, because that's the majority of our history. We are here because of the magic of life.
So we think that we don't expect that the experts will give you the entire picture. It's not intended that way. Just, if you like, the key points on their subject as for future debate. In that way, all of you will be able to have your say.
Romania, like many other countries, has a law which obliges mining companies to carry out archaeological surveys before engaging in any destructive mining activities. I'm going to call the company RMGC. It's a gold corporation that was in the film, a lot about it. RMGC spent $11 million apparently on archaeological research in 2001, 2 and 3, while the University of Toulouse's Department of Archaeology under Beatrice Coe independently surveyed Mount Koenig, the mountain which contains the most and best Roman and probably pre-Roman mining galleries. Although there's been relatively little archaeological survey and excavation at Rosia Montana, enough is known to be able to state that it is of outstanding significance, a cultural landscape that evolved over 2 millennia, containing the remains of the Roman underground mining system, 7 kilometers of galleries, developed and extended during the Middle Ages, Renaissance, and Modern Age to some 80 kilometers of galleries, together with the remains of the mining hydrotechnical system and the traditional mining town with its central market square, where the numerous public functions were grouped in a neoclassical architectural urban ensemble. This urban structure gradually dilutes into the industrial suburbs consisting of mining households. There are processing installations and sometimes even gallery entries. You saw quite a lot of the town in the film. The latest excavations have revealed the remains of important buildings, sanctuaries and built tombs. In the galleries have been found instruments and other remains related to Roman mining activity. The most famous finds from an earlier age, 18th and early 19th century, are the 25 written wax tablets with contracts and other unique inscriptions of the 2nd century AD, revealing many of the legal, financial, and social aspects of mining in the world of the Roman Empire. In this context, with historical association, which helps, by the way, when nominating a site for inclusion in UNESCO's World Heritage List, it is a historical fact that the acquisition of the Dacian mines by the Romans revived the economy of the empire and enabled Trajan to build his great forum and column in Rome. A scene from the column shows Roman legionaries loading the Dacian king Decebalus' treasure of gold and silver vessels into the saddle packs of 3 horses. The French archaeologist Beatrice Coe, who recently surveyed Mount Koenig, has written, "I'm prepared to maintain that the heritage, especially the mining heritage of Rosia Montana, is exceptional in Europe and the whole world, and that for this reason, the greater part of it must be preserved in situ." the identification, protection and conservation of the architectural and archaeological heritage comes under the Romanian Ministry of Culture, the Pro Patrimonio Foundation and the Romanian Association ARA, Architecture, Restoration, Archaeology, have at times assisted the ministry in this task. Pro Patrimonio and ARA have been advocating for some 10 years or more a properly sustainable development at Rosia Montana, the conservation of the landscape and of the archaeological and architectural heritage, and the development of tourism, agriculture, and existing local industry. For the past 4 years, ARA have been conducting summer schools for architectural conservation at Rosia Montana. In the autumn of 2010, they were commissioned by the Minister of Culture, the then Minister of Culture, Kelemen Hunor, to prepare a dossier on Rosia Montana which could form the basis of nomination to the UNESCO World Heritage List. At about the same time, the ministry informed me that they would be inviting a group of distinguished English archaeologists to Rosia Montana to write a report on Mount König, stressing its unique value and exceptional importance, or so they hoped. The ministry then said they unfortunately had no money with which to pay for the report. I said I would try to raise the money from Pro Patrimonio members, which I did, some £10,000, and some months later paid for the report. Although we have never received a copy of this report, called, by the way, Statement of Significance, we know that it fulfilled expectations by stressing the unique value and exceptional importance of Mount König. However, a few months later, in July 2011, Kelemen Hunor, who was still Minister of Culture, announced a protocol by which RMGC undertook to invest $70 million in Romania's heritage. The $70 million was in addition to the $43.5 million already allocated for investment in the restoration of the historical monuments of Rosia Montana itself, and in addition also to the $25.5 million allocated to environmental restoration, a condition of being granted the environmental permit. Indeed, the whole protocol was conditional on RMGC's receiving all the necessary permits, which had to be definite and irrevocable. At the same time as Kelemen Hunor announced this protocol, or big bribe as I prefer to call it, he got the county of Alva's Department of Culture to issue a new archaeological discharge certificate for Mount König. Discharge certificate means that you can now destroy the mountain and destroy all the archaeology. While he himself listed Mount König Grade A, which is the top grade of listing. Finally, a word or two about RMGC. RMGC more or less took possession of Rosia Montana from 2001 onwards, buying many buildings and destroying 150 of them in Rosia alone. They are supposed to have destroyed about 200 altogether. In 2003, at the request of RMGC, the local authority, which meant that any alternative development, tourism, agriculture, wood, furniture manufacture, was not allowed. Rosia Montana was declared an industrial zone by the local authority. In 2008, Albonus Major, the local amenity society, whose president, by the way, Eugen David, featured in the film extensively, Albonus Mayor won a lawsuit against RMGC which annulled that first archaeological discharge certificate. Despite this annulment being irrevocable, a new archaeological discharge certificate for Koenig was issued in 2011, as we've already seen, the annulment of which is at this very moment being asked for in a lawsuit at the Tribunal in Cluj, of which you saw a picture in the film again, towards the end. As for the local authorities' iniquitous designation of Rosia Montana as an industrial zone, this too was challenged in the Court of Appeal at Alba Iulia in 2009 and annulled irrevocably. To RMGC, it must appear to be getting more and more difficult to overcome the illegality of their project, of their monstrous project, I should say. Hence, of course, the terrible law project, the Project de Lege, about which you heard also at the end of the film. The Project de Lege proposed by the government itself.
First and foremost, just some top-line information on the scale of this project. Many of you know already that the sulfur cyanide used to separate the precious metals from the rubble is in quantity of 13 times more than in the whole of Europe at the moment, which inevitably raises a question of any particular risk that may occur. The scale of the risk is 13 times larger than in Europe. On top of that, the 4 mountaintops that will be removed through explosion will create a crater visible from space that is 8 kilometers wide. And all the beautiful pastures that you've seen in the film, in the aerial shots, will be a grey hole. In addition, the spread of the cyanide lake and the tailings that will come from the proposed exploitation will cover 600 hectares, which, in terms of an environmental value, we need to assess on what you're losing on 600 hectares and what the value of that is. Is it forest? Is it farmland? Is it wildlife? And therefore that comes into play. This particular issue is a symbolic issue for Romania because you've seen that in the past month, tens of thousands of young people and in spirit or in body have protested across the world in 41 cities and around the globe and in tens of cities in Romania. It's a symbolic battle that sparked with the proposed legislation, but has taken the shape of a bigger question. Where do we want to go as a society? Do we want to be thinking of a long-term future? Are we thinking long-term of our future generations, or are we thinking of this benefit that materializes in a new home or a new car? So that would be kind of the top-line thinking that I want to speak to you about today. One recent piece of information that may be relevant in terms of the environmental impact is an argument that the Prime Minister of Romania has brought into play in the last week, which is the fact that cyanide mining in Europe does not, it is a common practice that is successful in many parts of the world. To support his argument, he's made a visit to Finland, meeting various mining companies and members of the mining lobby in Finland, coming back to Romania to inform the public that cyanide mining is working very well in a very modern country, and there is no reason for people in Romania to be fearing any risk of catastrophe and so on. The day after his statement, Mrs. Satu Hassi, which is an MEP in Finland and is working on various environmental issues with the environment minister there, has made a public statement saying that Mr. Ponta is very ill-informed, and I shall just give you a couple of her arguments. So, first and foremost, out of the mines in Finland that Mr. Ponta describes as being a successful story of cyanide mining, only a small fraction uses cyanide sulfur. Second of all, out of those 52 mines, small mines in which the cyanide lakes are used in sealed containers, the vast majority have a major environmental EU legislation, water quality legislation violations, which are being pursued by the European Commission in court. So those success stories that we are being told, that are being sold to justify a gain for a finite monetary gain for our country, are not as they are being presented. In addition, the population density in Finland, by which these success stories are being presented, is 10 or 20 times less than in the region that would be affected by the mining project in Romania. Therefore, any sort of risk that is being weighed when talking about this project needs to take into account the people that will be affected. Near 2 kilometers away from the exploitation area, there are villages which still hold 6,000-7,000 people. Those are not the people that would be expropriated, but they are 2 kilometers away from what could be an environmental disaster. How would a company which at the moment provides whose annual report at the moment shows that they have the they have the money to cover the start of the project and not the money to account for the securing of the lake and so on, how can such a company provide any sort of safety for people who are not in the parameter that is described? Furthermore, in regard to the fact that they are, the company in their annual report, they are saying that the mine, they are saying that the mine will be, pardon me. In their annual report, they are saying that the mine will be a secure environmental, that the mine will be secured from environmental risk through financial investment. As I said before, the money accounted for that is a very minute sum, and the investment would come from the gold extracted there. As other cases in Europe have shown, the projected gold deposits that a mining company is taking on a certain pace is usually much lower than expected. This is for financial reasons and obviously to present the story in a very good way for investors. So if there is no money to prevent or to pay for any environmental cleanup, then and there is no guarantee of the value that you're getting out of there, how can you go ahead and say that this will provide benefits for the local people? And also, The history at Rosia Montana regards mining, and the mining that has taken place there for the majority of the time, from its incipience, has been traditional mining and not mining that involves destroying nature. In that situation, the people who have flourished through mining there have flourished through the fact that they have had farmland, and their families and relatives were involved in other additional activities to do with mining. And these are sustainable agriculture practices like wildflower and wildberry collection, harvesting, which provided additional income. In the eventuality that this project does begin, none of these additional economic opportunities would come into play. I'm a little bit hot and nervous, and I see that I'm kind of getting into too much detail that may not be needed right now, but and so I'm going to just make a final point on the reason I've come to be here today, and the reason you've come to be here today, which is the fact that for a month's time, more than a month's time, globally, people have risen to say that Rosia Montana is a symbol for the future that we will be, that we will have as a country, but also as a society, as a European society, and as a global society. If the largest open cast cyanide mining project in Europe is to go ahead, that will set a precedent for what society wants from its future, what it expects, what it values from its future. If the Rosia Montana project doesn't go ahead, the precedent there is a generation which has only now started to emerge as leaders of opinion and so on. And this is what we've been feeling in the past month or more. This protest in London, which have seen more than over 30 international media coverage, were organized and have started from a group of a few dozen people who have never met before, with vast experience from manual labor to high academia. The night that the proposed law was announced, people that never knew each other decided that wherever we are standing up. And what are we standing up for? We are standing up for the ability to decide what we consider to be valuable for our future.
As we have seen from this very moving documentary, right, and paraphrasing the famous Philantropica movie, life is complex, it has a lot of aspects. Viața e complexă și are multe aspecte. So this project is the same, right? It is very difficult, even from an economic, financial, business standpoint, to say authoritatively that the project makes 100% sense and should go ahead because it's beneficial for everybody. On the other hand, as we have seen again, we cannot argue that the project is 100% detrimental from an economic standpoint, right? And there are some people who, for better or worse, they want it to happen, and we'll have to see why that is the case. We could talk a lot about this, right? Probably for hours or even days, but I'll try to focus on three key questions that I think are worth asking. The first one is basically, since we're talking about development, sustainable development, and so on, I would simply ask, to what extent does RMGC's proposed mining project represent as an example of sustainable development to the region, right? Because we've seen a lot from the interventions of the PR representative of the company that the project, the environmental risks can be contained, and with the proper investment, there's no major risk, everything should be fine. People will get jobs for a period of, whatever he said, 17 years. There will be 3,000 jobs, and so on, right? So everything seems very, very nice, right? On the other hand, the question is what will happen after those 17 years, right? If we're looking, this is a region, an area that has history of 2,000-3,000 years, right? If we want this place, or several, even more than that, right? So if we want this place to be there another 3,000 years, right? I'm not sure that even from an economic standpoint, 17 years of exploitation make perfect sense. A second question that I think it's worth raising is, what is the project's opportunity cost, right? Or in other words, what is the next alternative, or the next best alternative? On one hand, Rosia Montana Gold Corporation, right, will come and tell you basically that the project has virtually no opportunity cost. This is the best that can happen to the region, to the people there, right? We've seen they kept bringing up, look, the region has a lot of poverty, it has high unemployment. If the project doesn't happen, the area will remain a depressed area. I was also very, or quite confused by the PR representatives from Rosia Montana Gold Corporation when he said that the people, the opposition, are not open to dialogue, right? But how can you be open to dialogue when the lobby of the company succeeded in transforming the area in an exclusive mining region, right? So I was having a discussion with Mr. Rossi about this. What does this mean? This means that basically no new industry, whether it's tourism, whether it's, you know, a little shop, you can't open it, right? Because everything is supposed to be mining related, right? So this is almost like challenging me to run a marathon against you and shooting me in the leg, right? And saying, oh, run baby run. You can't do that, right? On the other hand, there is actually a very, very good report, so written by Fundația Pro Munții Apuseni, the Pro Apuseni Mountains Foundation, which actually explains in detail what are some of these alternative projects, right? What could be done going forward in the region should the big Rosia Montana Gold Corporation mining project not continue, right? And they identify, for instance, 4 big issues, or 4 big alternatives. The first one is sustainable mining, right? Sustainable mining means that you're mining this over a longer period, you're mining it through the current galleries or through developing new galleries, not in an open pit environment that's supposing using such huge amounts of cyanide. Secondly is the tourism industry, right? The development of an ecotourism industry which could leverage the historical heritage of the site. Hopefully, if the site succeeds in being named or being appointed a UNESCO heritage site, that should draw a lot of tourists to the area and also to Romania as a country, right? And one example is, for instance, in Poland, where a similar project that, you know, doesn't have the historical heritage and background to such prestigious and so long in time that Rosia Montana has, succeeded in actually attracting apparently over 1.2 million tourists every year, right? So if you're attracting 1.2 million tourists for, you know, a smaller and lesser prestigious project, why couldn't this happen to Rosia Montana? A third industry or third alternative is basically developing the timber and the forestry industry in the area, right? And again, this could be done very, very in an ecologically friendly manner, right? You could do certain plans of, you know, foresting or deforesting certain mountains while planting and replanting on others. So again, there is a viable industry to be developed in the area, an industry that actually has existed, and there's no reason why it shouldn't exist going forward. And finally is the sustainable agriculture or farming, right? You remember the leader of Alburnus Major, right? Nimeni nu se poate manipula cu vaca mea, right? That's the idea, right? So this type of agriculture is again, Romania is a gold mine for this type of agriculture. It can go forward, it can develop, and very specifically one example would be, for instance, the wild berries harvesting, which, you know, if any of you have been recently to one of the, you know, Tesco's or Waitrose, right? 1 kilogram of berries, of wild berries here, it's whatever, 20 pounds or something like that. In Romania, you buy 4 kilos of these. I actually bought myself recently from Rânca, 4 kilos of this for less than 6 pounds, something like that. It's about 30 lei, right? So imagine what sort of industry that could evolve into. And finally, the last question, again from an economic/business standpoint, that I think is worth asking for now, is which project has a bigger multiplier effect, right? So again, not just going the project or the financial implications of the project itself, but what are the positive externalities or the negative externalities for that matter, right? And from Rosia Montana Gold Corporation standpoint, again, the project seems to make perfect sense, right? It creates jobs, direct and indirect jobs. It generates taxes to the government, right, which is beneficial. It brings some sort of know-how or knowledge to the region in terms of mining, although I'm not sure that in 17 years, when they pack their technology and move on to the next country, that know-how will remain. On the other hand, the negative externalities that they are trying so hard to minimize, we've all heard from my colleague here, right? The risks are simply huge, and when no matter what assurance they're trying to give us, it's very difficult. Having seen in the past similar projects, it's very difficult to trust them. And just to give you a very specific example. 2 weeks ago in The Economist, September 21st, there's a piece on page 48 called Mining in the Dominican Republic, Sickness and Health. Sickness and Wealth. And basically the article talks about $4 billion that were invested by two Canadian companies, Barrick Gold and Gold Corp, which I believe is the same Gold Corporation that is in Romania, that have developed a truly world-class operation that should provide the country's government with $10 billion over its 25-year life. Exactly the same story. You can replace Dominican Republic with Romania, huge promises, and so on. However, the problem is the new mine is poisoning rivers, it's causing illnesses, it's causing deaths of farm animals. Although the companies have signed the International Code of Practice for the handling of cyanide, and it says it's in the process of capturing all the surface flows, same story just we heard here, right? It's impermeable, we're going to capture everything, everything is safe if managed properly, and so on, right? And then it's saying that they're doing regular tests, and their tests prove that the water is not infected. On the other hand, the community leaders say they have no knowledge of such tests, and the government claims that they used to have such tests in the past, but they lost records of past tests in the rivers. Again, sounds like a familiar story, right? Instead of Transportul din România, which kind could not find the original Bechtel contract, right? So basically, again, just from an economic standpoint, to sum up very briefly, although we can see advantages and disadvantages for both sides, right? Yes, you can generate a few $1 billion in taxes and create a few hundred jobs for 10, 17 years, right? The project cannot be judged purely from an economic or business standpoint, right? And it has a lot of other implications: cultural, environmental, social, or the human aspect, right? Some of the stories that we've seen, they're really human tragedies, right? It's very difficult to put a monetary value on any of those, right? And finally, of course, it also has a big political component, and we've seen both sides of, both the opposition as well as the current government fighting over it, and yeah, so things are not as simple, and yeah, I believe that purely on economic value, even purely on economic value, on the other hand, it doesn't really make sense to continue with the project, given that there are so many other alternatives. Thank you.